The prison guard could not believe what he was seeing. His flashlight shook in his hand as the old metal floor beneath death row slowly slid open. A hidden staircase appeared from the darkness. No one was supposed to know it existed. Not the guards. Not the warden. Not even the prisoners locked inside the most feared part of the prison. Cold air rushed up from below. The smell was old and strange, like something that had been hidden for many years. Guard Ethan Brooks pointed his flashlight down the stairs. What he saw next made his heart race. There was a room. A secret room. Hidden directly beneath death row. Inside the room were dozens of dusty boxes, stacks of old prison records, and something else. Something far more shocking. A chair sat in the middle of the room. And tied to that chair was a man. A man nobody had seen in nearly 20 years. The man's eyes slowly opened. Then he whispered 4 words. "They know you're here." Suddenly, a loud metal door slammed shut somewhere below. The lights flickered. The old prisoner looked terrified. And before Ethan could ask a single question, footsteps echoed through the darkness. Someone else was inside the hidden room. Someone who was never supposed to be found. But who was it? And why was there a secret room beneath death row? To understand the answer, we have to go back 3 weeks earlier. The prison was called Blackstone State Prison. It sat far away from any town. Tall fences surrounded it. Watchtowers stood in every corner. Most people only knew one thing about Blackstone. It held some of the most dangerous criminals in the country. At the end of the prison stood death row, the oldest part of the entire prison. Even experienced guards disliked working there. The hallways were dark. The walls were cracked. And strange noises often echoed through the building at night. Most guards laughed about ghost stories. But they still walked a little faster when they passed those halls. Ethan Brooks had worked at Blackstone for 6 years. He was known for following rules. He never caused trouble. He never looked for mysteries. But one rainy night, a small event changed everything. It started during a routine inspection. Ethan was checking empty storage rooms near death row. The job was boring. Most nights nothing happened. As he walked through an old hallway, he heard a faint knocking sound. Knock, knock, knock. He stopped. The sound seemed to come from inside a wall. Ethan listened carefully. The knocking stopped. He waited. Nothing. He shook his head and continued walking. The next night, he heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. This time he placed his ear against the wall. The sound seemed deeper now, almost like it was coming from somewhere underground. He reported it to his supervisor. The supervisor laughed. "Probably old pipes," he said. "Don't worry about it." Ethan tried to forget it. But strange things kept happening. An old maintenance map disappeared from the records office. A security camera near death row suddenly stopped working. One inmate claimed he heard voices beneath the floor. Another inmate reported feeling cold air coming through cracks in his cell. Most people ignored the complaints. But Ethan couldn't stop thinking about them. Something felt wrong. One afternoon, he visited the prison archives. The archives contained records going back nearly 100 years. Dust covered everything. Old papers filled metal cabinets. While searching through records, Ethan found something unusual. A prison blueprint from 1954. At first, it looked normal. Then he noticed a strange blank area beneath death row. A large section had been covered with black ink. Someone had intentionally hidden it. His heart started beating faster. Why would anyone hide part of a prison blueprint? Ethan made a copy and took it home. That night, he studied it for hours. The more he looked, the stranger it became. The hidden area was too large to be a mistake. There had definitely been something built beneath death row. Something important. The next morning, Ethan returned to work determined to learn more. But when he opened his locker, he froze. A folded piece of paper sat inside. He slowly unfolded it. Only 6 words were written across the page. "Stop digging. Forget what you found." Ethan stared at the message. Nobody should have known about the blueprint. Nobody should have known he was investigating. Yet somehow someone did. Then, as he looked up, the prison alarm suddenly exploded through the building. Red lights flashed. Guards began running. Prisoners shouted from their cells. And over the emergency radio came a message that made Ethan's blood run cold. A prisoner from death row had vanished. Locked inside his cell 1 minute. Gone the next. And beneath that same cell, workers had just discovered a section of concrete that sounded hollow. The alarm continued screaming through Blackstone State Prison. Red lights flashed across the walls. Guards rushed down the hallways. Prisoners pressed their faces against cell doors, trying to see what was happening. Ethan Brooks ran toward death row with the other officers. Nobody could understand how a prisoner had disappeared from a locked cell. It should have been impossible. When Ethan reached the cell, he immediately saw the problem. The door was still locked. The bars were untouched. There were no signs of a fight. No broken locks. No damaged walls. Yet the prisoner was gone. The missing inmate's name was Daniel Harper. 4 years, he had rarely spoken to anyone. He spent most of his time reading old books and writing notes that nobody understood. Many guards believed he was harmless. Others thought he knew secrets he never shared. Now he had vanished without a trace. A maintenance crew arrived with tools. One worker tapped the floor beneath Daniel's bed. Knock, knock, knock. The hollow sound echoed through the cell. The room became silent. Everyone heard it. There was definitely empty space below. The prison warden, Richard Collins, stepped forward. His face looked pale. "Open it," he ordered. Workers began breaking apart the concrete. Dust filled the air. Chunks of floor cracked apart. Several guards stepped back. The hole grew larger. Then one worker suddenly froze. "There's something down there," he whispered. Everyone looked. Beneath the broken concrete was a metal hatch. An old metal hatch, covered in rust, hidden under the floor for decades. The workers pulled harder. The hatch slowly opened. Cold air rushed upward. The same cold air inmates had been talking about for months. A narrow tunnel stretched into darkness. Nobody could see where it ended. The warden stared into the opening. His expression changed for a moment. It almost looked like fear. Then he quickly regained control. "Seal it," he ordered. Several guards exchanged confused looks. "Sir," one asked. "I said seal it." The order made no sense. A prisoner had vanished. The tunnel might explain how. Yet the warden wanted it closed immediately. Ethan watched carefully. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Later that evening, the tunnel was sealed with temporary steel plates. The official explanation was simple. The prison would investigate later. Most guards accepted the answer. Ethan did not. That night he couldn't stop thinking about the warning note in his locker. "Stop digging. Forget what you found." Someone wanted the secret hidden. Someone powerful. The next day, Ethan quietly visited the archives again. This time he searched for information about prison renovations. Hours passed. Most records showed normal repairs. New doors. New pipes. New security systems. Then he found a folder with missing pages. Someone had removed entire sections. But one document remained. It was a construction report from 1955. Most of the writing was damaged. Only a few lines could still be read. Underground section completed. Access restricted. Authorized personnel only. Project Raven. Ethan read the words several times. Project Raven. He had never heard that name before. No guard had. No records mentioned it anywhere else. It was as if someone had erased it from history. As Ethan placed the document back into the folder, he noticed something else. A photograph had slipped from between the pages. The picture showed a group of prison officials standing beside a newly built structure. At first it seemed ordinary. Then Ethan recognized one of the men. It was former warden James Whitaker, a man who had supposedly died 40 years earlier. Yet someone had circled his face with red ink. And beneath the photograph, a handwritten message read, "He never left." A chill ran through Ethan's body. What did that mean? Whitaker was dead. At least that was what everyone believed. That evening, Ethan drove home carrying copies of the documents. Rain pounded his windshield. The roads were nearly empty. His mind raced with questions. Project Raven. The hidden tunnel. The missing inmate. The strange warning. None of it made sense. When he finally arrived home, he noticed something unusual. His front door was slightly open. Just a few inches. Ethan was certain he had locked it. Slowly, he stepped inside. The house was silent. Too silent. Nothing appeared stolen. Nothing appeared damaged. Yet someone had clearly entered. Then he saw it. Another note. Placed neatly on his kitchen table. His hands trembled as he unfolded it. This message was longer. Much longer. It read, "Daniel Harper did not escape. He was taken. The room beneath death row is real. If you want answers, come alone. Midnight. Old maintenance tunnel. Trust no one. Especially the warden." Ethan stared at the note. His heart pounded. Outside, thunder shook the sky. For a long moment he stood frozen. Then he noticed one final sentence written at the bottom. 3 words that made his blood run cold. "He is still alive." Before Ethan could understand what it meant, every light inside his house suddenly went dark. The power had been cut. And somewhere inside the darkness, he heard footsteps. The footsteps stopped. Ethan Brooks stood frozen in the darkness of his living room. His heart pounded so hard it felt like a drum inside his chest. The power was out. Rain hammered against the windows. Thunder rumbled across the night sky. For several seconds, Ethan could hear nothing except his own breathing. Then came another sound. Creak. A floorboard moved somewhere inside the house. Someone was there. Slowly, Ethan reached for the flashlight he kept near the front door. His hands shook as he switched it on. A thin beam of light cut through the darkness. He searched the room. Nothing. The kitchen was empty. The hallway was empty. The bedrooms were empty. Whoever had been inside was gone. But the note remained on the table. The message felt more real now than ever. Daniel Harper did not escape. He was taken. And someone wanted Ethan to know the truth. At 11:45 p.m., Ethan left his house. The storm had become even stronger. Wind pushed against his car as he drove toward Blackstone State Prison. The prison looked frightening at night. The tall fences seemed darker. The watchtowers looked like giant shadows against the sky. Ethan parked several hundred yards away. He didn't want anyone noticing him. Especially the warden. The note had warned him for a reason. Trust no one. Especially the warden. A small maintenance entrance sat near the back of the prison property. Very few people knew about it. Years earlier, workers had used it to repair underground pipes. Now it was mostly forgotten. Ethan climbed through the entrance and switched on his flashlight. The tunnel stretched ahead. Cold air drifted through the darkness. Water dripped from old pipes overhead. Everything felt quiet. Too quiet. He walked deeper underground. Minutes passed. Then he noticed markings on the wall. Someone had painted small black ravens every few yards. Each bird pointed in the same direction. Forward. Toward something hidden. Project Raven. The words returned to Ethan's mind. The deeper he went, the older the tunnel became. The concrete walls slowly changed into old stone. These sections looked much older than the prison itself, as if they had been built long before anyone remembered. Then Ethan saw a light ahead. A dim yellow glow. He moved carefully. His flashlight remained off. When he reached the corner, he peeked around it. A small room sat ahead. Inside stood an elderly man. The man wore old prison clothes. His gray beard reached almost to his chest. His face looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. Very sharp. The old man looked directly at Ethan, almost as if he had been expecting him. "You're late," the man said quietly. Ethan stepped forward. "Who are you?" The old man smiled sadly. "My name is Samuel Reed." The name meant nothing to Ethan. Then Samuel added something that changed everything. I was declared dead 22 years ago." Ethan stared at him. "What?" Samuel nodded. "They told everyone I died in prison. But I never died. They hid me." The room suddenly felt colder. Samuel pointed toward an old newspaper lying on a table. Ethan picked it up. His eyes widened. The newspaper carried a headline from 22 years earlier. "Prisoner dies during transfer." The photograph showed Samuel Reed, the same man standing in front of him. It was impossible. Yet there he was, alive. "Why would they hide you?" Ethan asked. Samuel's face became serious. "Because I learned what was beneath death row." Ethan's stomach tightened. "The secret room?" Samuel nodded slowly. "The room is only the beginning." Before Ethan could ask another question, Samuel grabbed his arm. "Listen carefully. There isn't just one room. There are many. Some were built decades ago. Others were built recently. They connect beneath the entire prison." Ethan struggled to process the information. "Who built them?" Samuel looked toward the tunnel entrance, as if he feared someone might be listening. Then he lowered his voice. "The people running Project Raven." "Who are they?" Samuel hesitated. For a moment, fear crossed his face. Then he answered. "Some of them wear prison uniforms. Some wear suits. And some of them are supposed to be dead." A chill raced down Ethan's spine. The photograph from the archives flashed through his mind. Former Warden James Whitaker. He never left. Could it be true? Could someone believed dead still be connected to the prison? Suddenly a loud metallic bang echoed through the tunnel. Both men jumped. Another bang followed. Closer this time. Samuel's face turned pale. "They found us." The old man rushed toward a wooden cabinet. He opened it and pulled out a dusty folder. "Take this." Ethan grabbed it. "What is it?" "Proof. Everything is inside. Names, records, dates." The banging grew louder. Heavy footsteps echoed through the underground passage. Someone was approaching fast. Samuel pointed toward a narrow tunnel. "Go." "What about you?" "I'll slow them down." Ethan shook his head. "No." Samuel grabbed his shoulders. "Listen to me. If they get that folder, everything stays buried. You have to leave." The footsteps were almost upon them now. Voices echoed through the darkness. Several people. Not just one. Ethan reluctantly turned toward the escape tunnel. He ran. Behind him he heard shouting. Then a door slammed. Then silence. For nearly 10 minutes Ethan raced through twisting passages. Finally he reached a rusted ladder. He climbed upward. A hatch opened above him. Fresh air rushed into his lungs. He emerged inside an abandoned storage building near the edge of prison property. Rain still fell outside. For a moment, he thought he had escaped. Then he looked down at the folder. Something had fallen out. A photograph. An old black-and-white photograph. Ethan lifted it into the light. The picture showed several men standing inside the secret room beneath death row. One of them was former Warden James Whitaker. Another was Samuel Reed. And standing between them was someone Ethan recognized instantly. Someone currently working at Blackstone Prison. Someone he spoke to almost every day. Written across the back of the photograph were 6 terrifying words. "The next warden has already been chosen." And underneath that message was a name. Ethan's own name. Ethan Brooks stared at the photograph. Rain drummed against the roof of the abandoned storage building. For a moment, he could not breathe. His own name was written on the back. "The next warden has already been chosen." Ethan Brooks. It made no sense. He had never wanted to become a warden. He had never even applied for a promotion. He was just a guard. An ordinary guard. So why was his name connected to Project Raven? And who had written it? Ethan quickly opened the folder Samuel Reed had given him. Inside were dozens of documents. Some were old and yellow. Others looked newer. Many carried official prison stamps. The first page contained a list of names. Wardens. deputy wardens, supervisors, maintenance workers. Some names were crossed out. Others were circled in red ink. As Ethan turned the pages, a pattern began to appear. Every few years, someone new joined Project Raven. And every few years, someone disappeared. Official records claimed those people retired, transferred, or died. But according to the folder, many had continued working in secret beneath the prison. Hidden from the public. Hidden from nearly everyone. Then Ethan found a page labeled, Purpose of Project Raven. His eyes moved across the document. The project had supposedly begun in the 1950s. Officially, it did not exist. Unofficially, it was designed to collect information. Secret information. Information that powerful people wanted buried forever. Evidence from old criminal investigations. Corrupt deals. Missing case files. Witness statements that never reached court. For decades, records had been hidden beneath death row. Locked away where nobody would ever think to search. The secret rooms were not simply storage areas. They were vaults. Vaults filled with dangerous secrets. Suddenly Ethan understood why people had disappeared. Anyone who learned too much became a threat. Anyone who tried exposing Project Raven had to be silenced. A cold feeling settled in his stomach. Samuel Reed had discovered the truth. That was why he had vanished 22 years earlier. Daniel Harper had probably discovered it too. And now Ethan had become the next problem. A loud crash outside snapped him back to reality. Someone had entered the building. Ethan quickly switched off his flashlight. Footsteps echoed through the darkness. Slow. Careful. Searching. He grabbed the folder and slipped behind a stack of old crates. The footsteps came closer. A flashlight beam swept across the room. Ethan held his breath. The beam passed only a few feet away. Then a familiar voice spoke. Ethan. Ethan froze. He knew that voice. It belonged to Deputy Warden Marcus Hale, one of the most respected officials at Blackstone. The same man Ethan spoke with almost every day. Ethan, I know you're here. Marcus sounded calm, almost friendly. But Ethan no longer trusted anyone. The photograph from the folder had shown Marcus standing inside the secret room years ago. He was connected to Project Raven. Ethan, Marcus called again. You don't understand what's happening. Ethan remained silent. Marcus sighed. Then he said something unexpected. Samuel Reed lied to you. Ethan's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? He finally asked. Marcus slowly lowered his flashlight. Samuel only told you part of the story. The deputy warden took a step forward. The secret rooms are real. Project Raven is real. But Samuel isn't a victim. Ethan frowned. Marcus reached into his coat. For one terrifying second, Ethan thought he was reaching for a weapon. Instead, Marcus pulled out an old photograph. He placed it on the floor and stepped back. Look. After several seconds, Ethan carefully approached. He picked up the photograph. His eyes widened. The picture showed Samuel Reed standing beside several men. All of them were smiling. All of them wore Project Raven badges. Samuel wasn't a prisoner in the picture. He appeared to be part of the project. Part of the organization itself. What is this? Ethan whispered. Marcus looked exhausted. The truth is complicated. For years Samuel helped run Project Raven. He wasn't imprisoned because he discovered the secret. He was imprisoned because he tried to control it. Ethan felt more confused than ever. Every answer seemed to create new questions. Then why help me? He asked. Marcus hesitated. Because something has changed. What changed? Marcus looked directly at him. Someone reopened the deepest room. A chill ran through Ethan's body. The deepest room? Marcus nodded. There are many hidden rooms beneath death row. But one room was sealed decades ago. No one was supposed to enter it again. Not ever. The deputy warden's face grew pale. 3 weeks ago, someone opened it. Ethan remembered the strange knocking sounds. The missing inmate. The warning notes. Everything had started around that time. What was inside? He asked. Marcus swallowed hard. I don't know. You don't know. Marcus shook his head. Nobody alive knows. The room was sealed before I was born. Even Project Raven avoided it. For a moment neither man spoke. The rain continued falling outside. Then Ethan noticed something. Marcus seemed genuinely afraid. Not nervous. Not worried. Afraid. The kind of fear people feel when facing something they cannot control. Suddenly a loud scream echoed through the building. Both men spun around. The scream came from outside. Then came another. And another. Prison alarms exploded in the distance. Red emergency lights flashed across the night sky. Blackstone Prison was in chaos again. Marcus grabbed his radio. Static crackled through the speaker. Then a panicked voice shouted, "Emergency! Emergency! Multiple tunnels have been breached. Unknown individuals moving beneath death row." The transmission cut out. Another voice immediately replaced it. This one sounded terrified. "They opened the deepest room." Silence followed. Then came 6 words that made both men go completely still. "Something is coming out of it." At that exact moment, Ethan's phone vibrated. A new message appeared on the screen. No sender. No number. Only one sentence. "You are already too late." Attached to the message was a photograph taken less than a minute earlier. The picture showed Samuel Reed standing inside the secret room beneath death row. And beside him stood the man everyone believed had died 40 years ago. Former Warden James Whitaker. Alive. And smiling. Ethan Brooks stared at the photograph on his phone. His hands trembled. It could not be possible. Former Warden James Whitaker had supposedly died 40 years ago. Yet there he was, standing beside Samuel Reed. Alive. Smiling. For several seconds, Ethan could not speak. Neither could Deputy Warden Marcus Hale. The prison alarms continued screaming in the distance. Red emergency lights flashed across the night sky. Then Marcus finally broke the silence. "We have to get back to death row." The 2 men rushed from the abandoned storage building. Rain poured from the sky as they drove toward the prison. The closer they got, the worse the situation looked. Guards were running everywhere. Emergency vehicles filled the prison yard. Several underground access points had been forced open. Nobody seemed to know exactly what was happening. Fear had spread through the entire prison. Inside the main building, Ethan and Marcus pushed through crowds of officers. The warden himself stood near the entrance to death row. His face was pale. "The tunnels are open," he said. "All of them." "What came out?" Marcus asked. The warden shook his head. "Not what? Who?" The answer sent a chill through Ethan. Without wasting another second, they headed underground. The hidden staircase beneath death row had been fully exposed now. For the first time in decades, the deepest levels of Project Raven were open. Dozens of officers followed them down. The air grew colder with every step. The old stone walls seemed endless. Finally they reached the secret room. The room Ethan had seen in the beginning of this nightmare. But now it looked different. Many of the boxes had been opened. Documents covered the floor. Records were scattered everywhere. The secrets of Project Raven were no longer hidden. Then Ethan saw them. Samuel Reed and James Whitaker. Both stood calmly at the far end of the room. Neither tried to run. Neither seemed afraid. "You finally made it," Samuel said. Ethan stepped forward. "Tell me the truth." Samuel nodded. "That's why we're here." "For years," Samuel explained, Project Raven had hidden evidence from hundreds of investigations. Some records were hidden to protect powerful people. Others were hidden because officials feared public panic. As decades passed, more secrets were buried. More files disappeared. Eventually Project Raven became bigger than anyone intended. The people running it believed they were protecting the country. Instead, they created something dangerous. A system with no oversight. A secret organization operating inside a prison. James Whitaker then revealed the biggest truth. He had never died. His death had been faked by members of Project Raven. For 40 years he had lived beneath the prison, helping maintain the hidden archives. But recently he discovered something alarming. Someone inside Project Raven had started destroying records. Evidence was disappearing forever. Truths that should have been preserved were being erased. That was why Samuel returned. That was why Daniel Harper had been taken. Daniel had discovered the destruction and secretly copied files. To protect him, Samuel's group moved him into the underground network before others could reach him. The missing inmate had never escaped. He had been hidden, protected. Everything suddenly made sense. The warning notes, the tunnels, the disappearances, the photographs, the secret rooms. But one question remained. Why me? Ethan asked. Whitaker smiled. Because you were the first honest person we found. Ethan frowned. Whitaker pointed toward the old photograph. We watched many guards over the years. Most ignored strange things. You didn't. You asked questions. You followed evidence. You wanted the truth. Marcus looked surprised. The note about Ethan becoming warden? Whitaker nodded. It wasn't a threat. It was a recommendation. For the first time, Ethan understood. His name had been chosen because someone believed he could finally end Project Raven the right way. Not by hiding it. Not by controlling it. But by exposing it. The following weeks changed everything. State investigators arrived at Blackstone Prison. The hidden rooms were documented. The secret archives were examined. Thousands of forgotten records were recovered. Project Raven officially ended. The underground rooms were sealed. Not to hide evidence, but to preserve history. Daniel Harper was found alive and safely returned to protective custody while investigators reviewed the information he had uncovered. Samuel Reed finally told his full story to authorities. James Whitaker publicly revealed the truth about his fake death. For the first time in decades, the public learned what had existed beneath death row. The story shocked the nation. Months later, life at Blackstone slowly returned to normal. The prison felt different now. Brighter. Less haunted. Less secretive. One evening, Ethan stood alone near death row. The sun was setting. The old halls were quiet. For the first time in a long while, he felt at peace. The mystery was over. The truth had finally come out. As he turned to leave, he noticed something sitting on his desk. A small envelope. His name was written across the front. Confused, he opened it. Inside was a single photograph. A photograph nobody had ever seen before. It showed the original builders of Project Raven in 1954. Dozens of faces stared back at him. On the back was a handwritten note. Ethan read it twice. Then a third time. His heart skipped a beat. The message said, Project Raven was not the first. And it was not the only one. Some secrets are still waiting to be found. Ethan slowly looked toward the prison. The mystery beneath death row was over. But somewhere out there, another secret was waiting. And this time, he knew exactly where to start looking.